Hello Canada, welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias the Guy. Well, I apologize, I ended up having to take the day off yesterday. I had a major breakdown and I still haven't quite got it fixed. I've got my motor tore all apart. And yeah, life goes on. So, with all of the crap going here today, I've been slowly trying to build this file while I have been trying to get my vehicle running. And a lot of the mainstream, well, everybody in mainstream, but a lot of even the independents are missing what was the straw that finally shoved Carney's head so far up his own butt that it broke his elbows. And it was this.
The U.S. is expanding its tariff on steel and aluminum. It now applies to more than 400 products that have parts made of the metals. So wind turbines, rail cars, even furniture. Let's go to Catherine Cobden, President and CEO of the Canadian Steel Producers Association. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Marilla. Thanks for having me.
Was this expected at all?
Yeah, I mean, we knew that there was an inclusion process to expand the list of derivative, steel-containing goods that they tariff, but the magnitude, the scope of this is far greater than we expected.
Can you expand a little bit on what will be covered under this? I mentioned a couple of things, but if you could give us a greater idea here.
Yeah, sure. So it's 407 products. It equates to about $287 billion of exports into the United States, so things that they've imported in, and it's $28 billion of Canadian exports specifically that are targeted by this new tariff.
And we should mention that it's going to be that 50% markup that is already in place for steel and aluminum exports. So how will this affect the industry?
So essentially what this has done is taken a crushing situation and piled on, if you will. As you know, we've experienced 50% tariffs since June 4th, and prior to that, we had 25% tariffs. Now what this does is it goes after our customers, and not just our customers in the United States, but also our downstream customers in Canada. So that's a significant blow to the industry once again, and it's certainly another blow to the North American integration of our economies. For decades, we've built these, systems, and now we have to unravel. They're being unraveled, and we have to pivot.
So, the Trump administration, far be it for mainstream to tell you the truth, have been following all of the laws. And now I hope and urge you, if you're a new viewer, to, of course, like, share, and subscribe. But to check out my previous episodes, and you'll find a pile of a lot of really straightforward, sorry, so sorry, just the truth, just the facts. There's a lot of things that really has the States perturbed with Canada. The only thing protecting Canada right now is the agreement put in by the Conservatives during Mulroney's era. Now, along with the lefty ideology that's taken over, the complete lunacy of supporting Hamas and all of the rest of these extremists, flooding our country with immigrants, with more terror lords than any other country in the world coming from Canada into the United States, with the massive, largest super labs on the planet being found in Canada, with the, intercontinental and global drug trafficking trade that has literally put Canada in the spotlight around the world for being the hub, the center of the distribution worldwide of all things narcotics. And I can add way more onto that list. we haven't really had a fighting chance. Now, we could have, if we could have got rid of this government. We could have started to correct a lot of the things. We would have actually already had pipelines going in the ground. We would have had small reactors being scoped and built. We would have had, like, Parliament would never have shut down. That was the promise given. And I believe they would have done it. All of this elbows up, all of this anti-Trump, we're the right party, we're going to fight for you, has been unraveling. And now it's come to a head. And Canada was found, well, wanting. Because we were the ones, well, not us, our liberal left loony children government, who have been breaking the rules. Not only with the tariffs that they imposed, because they were actually tariffing CUSMA products, which Trump never did. So Trump was ready, there was already peeps and threads that were going out there on how they were actually going to take us to court because of our actions. There was a lot more to all of the weaving of how our economy, because of the Laurentian elite and the global takeover, has been flooding the States with steel made from China. Well, of course, then you got the drugs, and you got the terror lords, but a whole bunch of other little things, including bad business practices. Our banking systems are corrupt. I mean, look at TD. And again, if you didn't know, check out previous episodes. They were laundering money for Chinese and Mexican drug cartels through Canadian banks. This is something Sam Cooper's been talking about and trying to expose, and mainstream will not talk about it. They're too busy hammering on Poilievre. It's disgusting. Anyways, let's get down to the show today of PM Carney with his head up his own butt and his elbows broken. And we're just going to kind of break it down.
Mr. Carney, thank you for taking our questions. Your critics are going to say that this is an elbows down approach, that you're backing down to Trump. What are you gaining by dropping these tariffs?
So the first thing to say is, let's be clear. We have
let's be clear.
The best deal of anyone in the world right now. We have the lowest tariff rate on average, a little over 5.5% versus that 16% average for the world, and in many cases much higher. We have that confirmed, an executive order of the president a few weeks ago. It's important that we preserve that. It's important that we preserve that while we focus on two things: the strategic sectors, steel, aluminum, autos, lumber, and we focus on the upcoming review and likely changes to CUSMA. So we are matching something the Americans have done here first. And it's very significant, it's unique, we get the benefit. The second thing is, and I'll take your analogy, and I have played some hockey over the years, and there is a time in a game, in a big game, and this is a big game, when you go hard in the corners, your elbows up. The time in a game where you drop the gloves in the first period and you send a message. And we've done that pretty uniquely in the world. We happen to have the best deal with the Americans right now. I'd note. But there's also a time in a game where you want the puck, you want a stick handle, you want to pass, you want to put the puck in the net. And we're moving later into the game, and we're at that time in the game. And that's where the engagement is. Thank you.
Well, that was the biggest load of horse pucky I've ever heard. This man is a complete imbecile. Unbelievable.
And the German government says that you're going to Berlin next week.
Now, here's what Trump had to say.
How long are you willing to wait,
A
Mr.
very good
President?
call with Prime Minister Carney of Canada yesterday morning.
Yes.
Actually, Canada is taking away some retaliatory tariffs.
He's
So-
removing his tariffs, yeah.
Exactly.
He's removing his retaliatory tariffs, which I thought was nice. And we're going to have another call soon. Yep.
Now, did you catch that? Yesterday morning. Do you see? Media is not showing you everything. They had a call. More tariffs were brought in. All hell was breaking loose. I love the way Trump does the whole double look when he's asked about the call. This is why he wanted Carney. He wanted weakness. He wanted the ability to get the best deal. He wanted the weakest person possible. And guess what, Canada? Yeah.
We had a very good call.
You're getting closer towards an
Well, I like
agreement
him.
on trade?
I like him. You know, look, I'm fighting for the United States. Canada and Mexico take a lot of our business over the years, over 25, 30 years, especially during the Biden years.
And I've said this since day one. He's fighting for the United States. He's the president of the United States of America. Not Canada. Not Mexico. Not Europe. Not Ukraine. Not Gaza. His first and main priority is the United States of America. Now, the rest all comes with who he is. He wants peace. He does not like war. We've seen this in his very first administration, during the first time he was president. He made a few mistakes. He corrected them. He was the first to admit it, and then doubled back and moved forward to push peace. And the whole time, he fought for the United States of America. Something that Canada doesn't have. We don't have a prime minister who actually cares about Canada. All he cares about is his own wealth. If he really liked Canada, his family would be living here. If he really loved Canada, all of his investments would be here. Not 97.8% down in the States. They would be here. He wouldn't be investing in pipelines around the world while shutting ours down. He would be building and investing in that infrastructure here. Trump loves him.
They took a lot of our business, and it's basically all coming back into the United States now. Well, hot as a pistol, and it's coming back in because of tariffs and the incentives we give. It's coming back, and it's impossible, I think, for another country to stop it. And we are working on something. We want to be very good to Canada. I like Carney a lot. I think he's a good person, and we had a very good talk yesterday. So I think it'll be good.
Mr. President, I have a question about the social ambassador.
Yeah, he definitely likes Carney. Oh man, we are in such big trouble.
Good morning, or good afternoon now, Prime Minister. You've dumped the digital services tax. You haven't responded to additional increases in tariffs from the Americans, and now you're removing counter tariffs here with no changes from the U.S. side in terms of how things are going. Why do you think appeasing Donald Trump in this trade war will work for Canada?
Well, the first thing is we're matching what the United States has done, what the president has done. We have the best deal of any country with the United States right now. 85% of our trade is tariff-free. We are taking this step, which doesn't include the strategic sectors, but matches what they have done. It's in the spirit of CUSMA, our free trade agreement with the U.S. and Mexico, and it gives a good foundation to build on that. That's the first point. The second is that the President and I had a long conversation yesterday, and we see the opportunity to build on where our relationship already is. There's a host of areas for investment in both our economies, a host of areas on the security side that we can build on, and we intend to advance those discussions as rapidly as possible. So the foundation is very strong. The opportunity is great, and we want to focus on those opportunities both. And I want to emphasize this. I know it's a little complex, but there is a review of CUSMA coming, that free trade agreement. It's due to happen in the spring. Preparation should start now. We're starting our preparations. We're updating our preparations. I'm sure the other parties will soon as well. But we're not going to wait. We don't want to wait for that process for those strategic sectors. It goes back to the earlier question about Madame's question about the workers and the businesses in steel and the most affected sectors. We're very focused on those right now, taking a number of measures to support them directly in Canada, including Buy Canada, diversification, other aspects. But of course, part of this is getting to a better balance with the United States, and that's the immediate discussions we're having.
This guy. You poor people who only watch CBC and CTV and legacy media. I please like, share, and subscribe. People have to actually get the truth. Sorry, so sorry. Just the truth, just the facts. Now, this same guy who literally got out of the box, fell on his face, and hasn't been able to get up on his skates since he got elected, is going to be the guy negotiating the new CUSMA. Donald is in heaven. Absolute heaven. And the provinces got caught going, all these talks. What happened? What happened to elbows up?
So, what does this change mean for BC, if anything? For more on that, we're joined by Ravi Kahlon. He is BC's Jobs Minister. Minister, thanks for being here.
Dan, thanks so much for having me.
What do you make of this move by the Prime Minister?
Well, it was a bit of a surprise to us, and it's a little too soon to tell. Use a ice hockey analogy, whether this is about regrouping our own end with the puck or whether this is pulling the goalie. Time will tell. Our focus and what the Premier has been clear with the Prime Minister on is that we want to make sure that we have 8 months to a year while we're renegotiating CUSMA. Our priority needs to be, our focus needs to be around strengthening our local economy, making sure we remove interprovincial trade barriers, doing everything that we can do to make sure that we're in a strong position for those negotiations.
So,
and this is every province. This isn't just BC. And then you got like business owners.
Do you think this is progress, or do you think this, because some criticism that's coming forward suggests that the Prime Minister is just capitulating to what the U.S. President wants?
Yeah, I think, I think devil's in the detail, and I guess we'll find out over time. But yeah, it is, definitely I have some concerns that what are we giving up and what are we getting in return? And is that tit for tat, or are we giving up too much? But, I think time will tell.
And so the Prime Minister has said repeatedly that they're really going to start beefing up major Canadian projects, but also just becoming much more self-reliant. For your industry, what would need to happen to facilitate that?
Well, I think we've heard a lot of talk about building projects, but we haven't actually seen any being built. So I think at some point we actually have to go, okay, let's get going and let's get the shovels in the ground. And let's make it an environment that we actually like manufacturing, and we want it to grow, and we want to see more capital invested in Canada. And that's something we're still not seeing at our level or my customers and my suppliers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because first thing he did is close Parliament and took holidays. The most existential threat. Trump bad, we're gonna fight, elbows up. The House is still empty. After everything that's been going on, the House is still empty.
Our country's been ripped off by friend and foe, nations all over the world ripped off, and the friends have been much worse than the foes for the most part. And they're not ripping us off. We just signed a deal with the European Union. They're paying us essentially $950 billion, like a signing fee. They're going to buy $750 billion worth of energy. They weren't buying much of our energy there. And they're very smart in doing it. And as you know, Ursula was here a couple of days ago having to do with the people, the leaders that we had a great, people said they've never seen anything like it. Well, we had the leaders of Europe right here in the Oval Office.
And where was Carney? They replaced him with a tree, a plant in the pictures. Well, there's a few pictures going around where literally there's a space and there's a plant there. So you've got a couple leaders and then a plant and then the rest of the leaders standing with Trump. And where's Carney? Where's Carney? The liberal revival. Where is it? Where is it? He Sean Foyt himself. He literally Canada really needs to wake up. You need to like, share, and subscribe. Not just me. A lot of other independents are putting just the truth. Sorry, just the truth, just the facts. And if more people saw it, they'd be able to actually have an educated vote. They would see what's going on and how corrupt not only the Liberal Party of the last 10 years is, but how they put their master in that chair of the Prime Minister. Let's listen to some more of this verbal diarrhea.
Wait. I reject the premise of that question, or your characterization of what I'm saying. We have the best deal with the United States right now. Okay? We have the best deal. Look at the numbers. Our tariff is 5.5%. We have 85% of our goods are free trade. It's not what we used to have. Nobody has a deal with the United States that they used to have. Nobody does. They have fundamentally changed. It's their right. We respect it. They have fundamentally changed their trade policy. They have new objectives. And they haven't just talked about those objectives. They put in place tariffs, and they have signed a series of trade deals, including with the European Union, including with others, that have put those into effect. Okay? So we're in a position where we have held out, not signed a deal that we don't agree with or that we don't think is in the best interest of Canadians, and focused on, and we will remain focused on those strategic sectors to the
Really? Is that so?
best interests of Canada first. Of course, America will focus on the best interests of the U.S. But we do so from a position where we're respecting, with this decision, we're respecting our agreement with the United States, and we are matching what they have done. That puts us in a good position for the next phase of these negotiations.
Right. Sure it does.
That our purpose is to put our country first, to defend our workers and their jobs, to ensure that they continue working and selling our world-renowned steel, aluminum, autos, lumber, and other products to the world. And we know that they have been under attack for a long time now. Our purpose also is to make this country affordable so our young people can buy homes, start families, and our seniors can afford both food and lodging and live out the dignified life that they deserve. We set the priorities for this fall session being to have stronger take-home pay with lower taxes and inflation. We want safer streets by locking up the criminals, secure borders with less immigration, and by ensuring those who do come to our country are not criminals or lawbreakers. And fourth, a sovereign Canada, a country that can stand on its own 2 feet, pay its own bills, and make its own decisions. And that's why, while we'll obviously hold the government to account and oppose liberal policies of high inflation, out of control immigration, crime, housing costs, and youth unemployment. We'll also propose positive ideas to lower the cost of living, make paychecks go further, make our streets safe, and secure our country's future. We've even proposed a very detailed bill, this Canadian Sovereignty Act, which would make Canada the fastest place in the world to get a pipe in the ground, to dig mines, harvest lumber, open ports, grow food, do all the things that a nation needs to do to stand on its own 2 feet. My message to Mr. Carney, steal this idea. Come steal it. I welcome you. Plunder it. I'll go into your office with my policy team and we'll hand it all over to you. You can even get the credit. You can draft it up. Let's pass it in September and let's get building. And we also continue to extend our hand to Prime Minister Carney to work together to get a good deal with the Americans. I promised that and I offered that to him multiple times directly. My Shadow Minister of Canada-U.S. Affairs has said the same thing to her counterpart. So far, no response. The Liberals seem to want to play partisan games and score political points rather than working with all parties to get a good deal for Canada. So my message to Mr. Carney, put partisanship aside and work with all parties to get an actual deal with the Americans that stands up for Canada's interest.
Far cry from what the media's been saying, hey? The media's been saying, oh, Conservatives won't work with them, they won't do anything. Oh, do you think this election taught him a lesson? Do you think he's going to be humble? And do you think he's going to want to work with Carney? And who's the party that doesn't want to work with who? This has been going on for over 9 years. You have children running our country. Low IQ children at that.
You know, we have to judge Mr. Carney by his performance. And not by the standards I set, by the ones that he set out for himself. So let's do that today. First, I was happy to hear that he got the president on the phone. I know that Mr. Carney has been trying to do that now for about a month. And today, the president accepted his call. And the prime minister took the opportunity to make a series of very generous concessions.
I don't know how he did that with a straight face, man. Gotta love Poilievre.
To President Trump. And I was expecting that when the call was reported that we'd find that President Trump had given us something in return. That Mr. Carney, being the negotiator he promised he would be, that he would get something after giving something. But not so. Today we learn that it has been yet another capitulation and climb down by Mark Carney. His elbows have mysteriously gone missing. And this call follows on other concessions. He promised during the campaign he would have dollar-for-dollar retaliation. He pulled that back. He made concessions on the military while getting nothing in return. He pulled back on his digital services tax, a terrible tax, but you'd think he'd get something in return for it. Nothing. And today, he removed even almost all of the tariffs on the United States and got none lifted from Canada. This continues with the weakness that he's shown on the world stage, continuing ahead with a $1 billion loan to the dictatorship in Beijing to build ships for Canada, creating jobs for foreign workers in steel and shipbuilding, while that same regime hits our farmers and fish harvesters with increasingly high and unfair tariffs. Mr. Carney's capitulations would be laughable if they weren't so tragic. They will harm our farmers, our workers, our people. More importantly, from his point of view, they are a broken promise. They are exactly the opposite of what Mr. Carney ran on. His signature promise in the last election was that he was going to put elbows up, negotiate a win, and match American tariffs. Let's go through the list. He has not thrown one elbow since he took office, except at our own workers. He did not meet his promise of a...
That was a great little punch about Hadu and the Liberals using everything they can in their power to save their, well, buddies and investors and the people involved in ripping billions of dollars from Canada. Again, previous episodes, the board members on Canada Air, they were already backdoor talking. They knew the Liberals were good. They were in cahoots with the Liberal government to ensure, to guarantee that while Air Canada was purposely trying to screw Canadian citizens and blame it on the flight attendants, they were using their connections and buddies within the Liberal Party to guarantee that they'd be forced back to work. The Liberals don't care about you. They don't care. They don't care.
July 21st deal with the Americans. Again, his promise, not mine. He did not, he's backed down while claiming that he would stand up. And he's gotten absolutely nothing in return. In fact, American tariffs are twice as high on Canada today as they were when Prime Minister Carney took office, promising to deploy his negotiating skills to get us a win. He promised he would have elbows up. He promised he could, quote, handle Trump, and that he would, quote, negotiate a win. Those are his promises, and he needs to be judged by his word. And this was not any promise, just any old promise on page 73 of his platform. It was the promise on which he ran his entire election campaign. And now he's abandoning it. So either he admits that he was wrong all along, or that he knowingly spread falsehoods to get elected. He needs to explain which of those two things it is. But it adds to a long list of
Oh, he was spreading falsehoods. He was lying through his teeth, because that's what Carney does.
Yeah, so what we know right now is that Mark Carney is a liar. And you don't have to take it on this particular topic. Look, just another one today. You see the latest flip-flop. 7 days ago, almost to the day, he was talking about how weak Canada's economy is. And then yesterday, he was talking about how not only is Canada's economy really strong, but it's actually stronger than the United States of America's. And then similarly, he was no longer chair of Brookfield when they made the decision to move their headquarters to New York, until it turned out that he actually was, and that he needed to be more precise. Then he said that Canada was responsible for the majority of semiconductor exports to the United States of America, and then it turns out we're actually responsible for something as low as 0.8% of semiconductor exports to the United States. So here's a guy who doesn't know what he's talking about half of the time, or distorts, changes mind, and lies about what he's talking about the other half. So I'm not particularly worried about this particular circumstance. It wouldn't be the first person someone exaggerates their role in something, and it won't be the last time either. Well, yeah, here's the thing, right? I mean, when Andrew Scheer was running for Prime Minister back in 2019, there was this pop-up where everybody found out he actually had an American passport and was an American citizen. And Liberals ripped their shirt off, screaming that this was like dual loyalties, and by virtue of that, he needed to rescind his passports. Now, Mr. Carney has three. He's a Canadian citizen, an Irish citizen, and a citizen of the United Kingdom, so a British citizen. He's already indicated to the press that he's in the process of rescinding or leaving those passports to the side and becoming an exclusive Canadian national. Now, I'm sympathetic to the fact that in Canada we've got people of multiple different backgrounds who've lived in different countries and may have accrued some citizenships along the way. But I do believe that the position of Prime Minister in particular is especially unique, and the person that occupies that role should be a Canadian first, but also a Canadian only. So we'll see how quick he is with rescinding those nationalities, but I do think that it's the right move. The same way I thought it was the right move for Andrew Scheer to do the same thing in 2019.
Yeah, the man can lie.
broken promises. Remember, he was going to build more.
Speaking of which, he still hasn't touched the passports, people. Another promise broken. Another lie.
More and at faster speeds than ever before? Well, you know, he's getting breathless media coverage because he's setting up a new office that will one day approve projects that may one day get built. 160 days in, and he's bragging that he's close to setting up a construction office of bureaucrats who don't swing hammers or operate heavy machinery, but sit in front of computer screens in Ottawa buildings. And not one pipeline has been identified, not one LNG plant, not one nuclear plant, not one hydroelectricity dam, not one major project has been identified, let alone approved, in the 160 days since he took office. And all of the anti-resource laws that will make them impossible to complete remain in place. On housing, he said he'd double home building. His housing agency says home building will drop by 13% over the next 2 years. And the housing crisis has tripled in its different directions. Under Trudeau, it was just that they were too expensive for anyone to buy. Now, it's too costly for builders to build, buyers to buy, or sellers to sell. An almost impossible triumvirate of failure in housing hell that only a Liberal Prime Minister could have accomplished. He said he would invest more and spend less. Well, look at the numbers. Spending is up 8% under Mr. Carney, and it looks like the deficit will be twice the one that Trudeau left behind. Though we don't know because Mr. Carney, the genius banker, still hasn't introduced a budget. And then there is the investment side, down $60 billion in what the Financial Times says the single biggest net outflow of investment in any 5-month period. That is Mr. Carney's track record on investment. He is spending more.
That, by the way, is in the last 6 months. That is since Carney took office, people. Over $60 billion has fled. And again, previous episodes, I warned. I showed the stock markets, I showed the companies. They were waiting at the borders to come back. There were investors here that were like, finally, we're going to get ready to put some big cash in here because they thought the Liberal government would fall. The day of the election, everybody that was at the borders waiting to come in to invest fled. Not only did they pull their money out, Canada is seeing the largest outflux of Canadian citizens moving because of the economic demise our country is in. We're in a free fall. And all of those people who had companies that were thinking, okay, I held off. I can now that we're going to get a good government in, we can get some taxes dropped. We can actually get some, build some stuff. Now they're running. They're selling off. They're fleeing the country. Over $60 billion since Carney came in office, people. Where's mainstream? Crickets.
And investing less. Meanwhile, immigration numbers continue to be out of control. Liberals have lost track of 600 non-Canadian criminals who were supposed to have been deported. They're still on our streets. Crime is raging to such a point where people are now demanding the ability to defend themselves in their own homes because they know the law will not defend them. And rightly, Canadians believe that they need to defend themselves if an intruder who's probably out on bail for the 100th time under Liberal laws comes into the house, and frankly, they should have the right to defend themselves and their property against an intruder. But it is sad that we've come to a place where people feel the law will not protect them, and Mr. Carney has sent home Canadian MPs while crime, the cost of living, housing costs, immigration are all up while elbows are down. That said, we're prepared to work with Mr. Carney and with anybody to put our country first, to tackle the cost of living. Our purpose is to unlock Canada's potential, make this a land of opportunity again. And we will prioritize stronger take-home pay, safer streets, secure borders, a self-reliant Canada. And I say to Prime Minister Carney and to all the other party leaders, let's get to work in the fall. Let's tackle these problems for real because our country is worth fighting for and worth working together for. So let's get it done. Thank you.
Mr. Poilievre, would you have... Not crazy? Not crazy? This is the party that's been trying to work with their oppositions. They've been trying, well, they've had 2 other leaders. How many elections? With the help of propaganda, got nowhere. Nothing but lies. Nothing but lies from the Liberal Party, the NDP, and the mainstream propaganda. Let's get back to blabbermouth nobody.
Hi, Prime Minister. Rachel Haynes from CTV. I'd like to ask you a little bit more about what you're saying about this matching the U.S. deal or what U.S. has put on Canada. In fact, it's only matching the goods under CUSMA, but in other areas, we're not matching the U.S. at all. They have 50% tariffs on our steel and aluminum products, but we only have 25% tariffs in return. Are you going to raise those tariffs to match that?
We're not raising those today. We've matched the tariffs on autos, similar structure as the U.S. We do have a difference between our tariff on U.S. steel and our tariff on U.S. aluminum. Those are part of the intensive discussions that we're underway right now.
Is that something that you'd look at in the future? And also,
we will look at. I'll give you three questions. I'll give you a short answer to that, which is that we'll look at everything. I mean, we look at our industry both in terms of how we support their retooling, their investment in the industries, liquidity for today, helping their workers, buying Canadian, diversifying markets, but of course trade policy, including with the United States, is part of that. But we're engaged in discussions with the United States about exactly those sectors. And that's what we want to advance to the benefit of our workers and our economy.
And I'll make this extra follow-up very quickly. You're talking about this putting us in a good position in the next phase, presumably the CUSMA negotiations. But as other people have pointed out, we've already folded on the digital services tax. We're taking away these counter tariffs. How is this a position of strength going into those negotiations?
We're in a position. First off, I'm in the negotiations, so I have a sense of how the negotiations are. This puts us, and directly the conversation the President and I had yesterday, is that we'll be following up in short order, he and I, on the progress on our discussions. So the teams are engaged, they're re-engaging on this. This helps accelerate that. Look, but it's a negotiation, but there's no guarantees in these things.
Oh, no, there's no guarantees. What happened to I'm the guy who's gonna solve Trump? I'm the guy. I'm the guy who can negotiate with him. Nobody else can. What happened to all that? What happened to all the promises? Promises. He literally promised. Mainstream seems to have forgot all about that, or they'd be showing old clips and they would be talking about it. They would be giving Poilievre a little bit more time rather than the typical video clips and sound bites that they use to try and make him look bad, to misinterpret his words, to favor their ideology, to make, conservatism look tarnished in some way.
Remove these retaliatory tariffs on the CUSMA compliant goods?
My approach would have been to negotiate from a position of strength. I would only have put in countermeasures that were sustainable and legally defensible.
Legally defensible, people.
And I would have also ensured that by now, 160 days in, we'd have new markets, new projects to get our goods overseas so that we could negotiate a deal. And you asked me whether I would have, my goal would be to have tariffs gone on both sides of the border. I would have gone to the President respectfully and said, you remove your tariffs, we remove ours, let's sign an agreement that restores the great free trading relationship that our two countries had for decades and that worked for both nations. That is what Prime Minister Carney promised during the election, and that's what I would have delivered in his place.
Do you agree with the Prime Minister that despite the tariffs in place, Canada still has the least punitive trade arrangement with the United States of any major economy? And if not, can you think of a country or a bloc that has a better deal right now than Canada?
Well, most countries have a better deal in reality because none of them have the same dependency on the American economy we do. So there's two parts to this. One, any access we have today is the result of Brian Mulroney. Let's be clear. There's not a single tariff-free item that's going into the United States that was not negotiated by Prime Minister Mulroney. I challenge anyone to go back and find an item that goes in tariff-free that was not originally included in FDA or NAFTA under Mulroney. So none of that is due to Mark Carney. I'm sorry, I know he likes to take credit for a lot of things. He can't take credit for what a prime minister did in the 1980s and 90s.
And media should be showing this, and they should be bringing this fact up. But they're not. Crickets. Protect their master.
The second, any small tariff on Canada, any amount, by the United States, has an outsized effect because it represents 20% of our economy is export, more than 20% of our economy is exports to the United States, which means that we are the single most dependent country on the United States, and any tariff at all will have more impact on our country than it does anywhere in the world. We should have tariff-free access to the United States as we had before. And that's what Mr. Carney promised when he said he would negotiate a win by July 21st. He should have delivered on his promise.
Mr. Poilievre, on steel and aluminum.
And he sure didn't, did he? Nope.
But the basis of this is we're matching what the United States has done. Okay? We're matching what the United States has done.
God, this guy is so full of himself. He really is.
The federal government has not yet matched the tariff rate on steel and aluminum. The U.S. is currently at 50%, while ours is at 25%. Would you like to see them raise that up to 50% and match the U.S.'s rate on steel and aluminum?
Well, my preference would be to see the Americans lower their tariffs so that we can reinstate free trade. But one tariff that I will be cutting for sure, and I will push the Prime Minister to cut for sure, on our steel and aluminum, is the industrial carbon tax. I find it astonishing. Well, I understand Donald Trump's priority is to take Canadian jobs and move them to the United States. He's been very blunt about that. What I don't understand is why Prime Minister Carney would help him do it with an industrial carbon tax on our steel and aluminum products. So our workers are not only hit with Trump tariffs, but with Carney's carbon tax. We need to get rid of the industrial carbon tax, and if Mark Carney will adopt the Canadian Sovereignty Act, then that will include the total elimination of the entire carbon tax, including for steel and aluminum. Oui.
Now, wouldn't that be something? The biggest tariff that Canadians are suffering are taxes, especially the buried carbon tax. But now, watch the prices go down on your food, people. Now you're going to see the real outcome of the consumer carbon tax being dropped. And I'm wondering what's going on in the Liberal Party that they're going to try to do to make sure that those prices stay high, because they still are trying to hide the theft from Canadians that the Liberal Party has been doing for how many years? It's absolutely disgusting. Now, here's a little reminder of who Carney is.
For his role with Stephen Harper and Jim Flaherty during the 2008-2009 financial crash, he doesn't have the same stellar reputation with everyone in Britain, does he?
I mean, if you look at the record of the Bank of England over the past decades, it has been poor. There was huge amounts of quantitative easing, huge amounts of printing money.
Which is just a fancy way of saying print money, right?
Correct, yeah, printing money. And also a huge bulge in public spending, which that enabled. He was also a major advocate of net zero, and Britain has probably gone further than any other country down the net zero route, and it's been disastrous for our economy. So if you're looking at reasons why the British economy has stagnated, why people's income per capita is now lower than Mississippi, which is the poorest state in America, I think a lot of the fingers can be pointed at the Bank of England.
By the way, Canada's there now too, since this interview. Actually, when the interview was going on, Canada had already reached that status. We were poorer than the poorest state Think about that. Canada as a whole is poorer than the poorest state of Mississippi.
Huge amounts of printing money, too much inflation, diverting resources away from the productive economy. But also, Mark Carney had a role in pushing the disastrous net zero agenda, which has been very, very damaging for Britain's oil and gas industry. And we now have the highest energy prices in the world. The other point I would make is that prior to the 2024 election, Mark Carney endorsed Rachel Reeves, Chancellor who's now in charge of British economy.
So she's now Britain's, what we call the finance minister. She's Chancellor of the Exchequer. And
yes.
Policies are not very good.
And she's put forward a disastrous budget, which has raised taxes, increased regulation. We now have the fastest rate of millionaires leaving our country of any country in the world apart from China. We've seen industry close down. So we saw the last steelworks that produce steel from scratch close down last year. We're seeing the oil and gas industry closing down. And we are at serious risk now of a financial crisis because the expected tax revenues aren't coming in, because taxes are too high, it's driving away business, and she has spent huge amounts on the state. So if Mark Carney intends to apply those types of policies to Canada, it would be a disaster.
Yes, it would.
But it was Mark Carney that set the culture of the Bank of England. The particular issue that I faced as Prime Minister, which was the Bank of England's failure to properly conduct financial stewardship of the pension industry. So the pension industry were very exposed to interest rates going up because they'd made a bet on derivatives of government bonds, essentially called LDIs. That unwound while I was Prime Minister. The Bank of England blamed me for the crisis, but last year they produced a report saying that 2/3 of the movements in the gilt markets were actually down to them. And again, that whole failure to actually do their job of regulating the prudential regulation and ensuring the financial stability of the country, that trajectory started under Mark Carney.
You getting this? Are you piecing this all together? Are you seeing all the warning signs?
They're quite upset that Carney's taking credit for saving the Canadian economy and changing banking regulations, which he had no hand in, was not even a part of. It wasn't even the Bank of Canada that did it. Now he's going around saying he saved two economies, and you're telling us, not quite. It wasn't exactly the savior of the British economy.
Well, if you look at the British economy since the year 2000, it has been a disaster. We have had very, very low economic growth. People aren't any better off really than they were back in 2010 because of the levels of inflation and the levels of immigration. So it is not an economic success story. If we compare ourselves to the United States, we were almost catching up with the United States in GDP per capita in the year 2000. We're now $34,000 per person worse off in Britain than they are in America. And this
sounds like a similar story to hear, but Carney,
it doesn't end. It doesn't end. And again, I was warning about this. I showed different interviews with Liz Truss, hoping that I get enough people to like, share, and subscribe to get the word out. And there were other independent media as well that were doing the exact same thing. And it's not that it fell on deaf ears. There's not enough people that are aware that there's independents like ourselves that are actually showing what mainstream is hiding. And that's all people need to see. They just need to see the truth. Sorry, so sorry, just the truth, just the facts.
What do these policies lead to?
Well, they've led in Britain to us having the highest energy prices in the world. We have the highest energy prices. It's made our industry uncompetitive. We've seen steel plants closing down, manufacturing closing down. The oil and gas industry itself has been closing down. Households are struggling with the cost of energy, and it has knock-on effects on everybody, farmers, it has knock-on effects on the hospitality industry. It has been disastrous for the British economy, and we're still being fed this propaganda that somehow green energy is cheaper. People can see their bills coming in, and they know it's simply not true. And there has been an entire industry around trying to persuade people that there are green jobs out there, that these climate change policies like building more wind farms, building more solar farms are going to drive the British economy. The only economy they've been driving is the Chinese economy. They're producing the solar panels. They haven't been driving the British economy before.
And meanwhile, there's vandalism on the landscape of the countryside. I remember the first time I flew into Glasgow after the wind farms went in on the flight path to the airport, and just devastated at hilltop after hilltop covered with the windmills that do not generate electricity at a lower rate in terms of price.
Yes, and I think we are seeing the world waking up to this, but Britain is being very slow to catch up with what is actually happening. And I think with Trump in the White House, we're going to see drill, baby, drill. The American energy being produced is going to be huge. They're going to be exporting it around the world. I think the same is going to be true of Canada. Meanwhile,
do you think Canada would drill?
This was 6 months ago. Is she the great descendant of Nostradamus? No. She's saying what all of us knew. People who are constantly learning, studying, researching. She's just stating the obvious.
Baby drill under Mark Carney, though.
No, I'm hoping for a Pierre Poilievre win as soon as possible.
Yeah, no doubt. And too bad we didn't get it.
I would say that Mark Carney has been one of the architects of the disastrous economic policies that have ruined the British economy, but also more generally, from the sort of Davos-led elite, ruined economies across Europe and across other parts of the world. So he has already demonstrated that he does not have the economic knowledge that's required to actually deliver growth. And we have seen the results of that stagnation in Britain. And my advice to the Canadians would be, do not go down the British path. We are now in serious danger of a financial crisis where the British government won't be able to fund its debt.
And that's where we're headed. And then you got the mouthpiece out right afterwards going and spreading all of this crap. It's just verbal diarrhea. I'm just going to play one little wee snap of this propaganda. Let me know what you think.
I want to ask you about this idea.
Watch her eyes. Watch her eyes. Watch her carefully.
That Canada was really one of the only countries to retaliate against President Trump's tariff plans. And when you've seen the sort of more preferential rates that our other trading partners have been able to secure, in retrospect, would you have taken this same tact?
Sure, I think we would have. I think, as I say, that the
Look at her face.
circumstance of last February or March is different than the circumstance at the end of August. The U.S. administration has been clear in terms of the 232 sectoral tariffs. We've seen, to your question, examples of agreements they've signed with those countries that haven't provided much relief, if any, in the 232 sectoral tariffs. But as we said at the beginning, the fact that President Trump and his executive order at the end of July confirmed the American exemption that they're according to imports from Canada that are compliant with the USMCA, with the Free Trade Agreement, means that Canada should mirror that exemption. And that's the decision that Prime Minister Carney announced today.
He had to, people. They were looking at taking Canada to court, and they would have won. We were the ones breaking the rules. There was no brain work behind what they did. It had nothing to do with Trump. It was an excuse for Carney and the Liberals to hide the actual amount of money that Canadians would have been saving when they dropped the consumer carbon tax. This ploy backfired on them. And like I said, now I'm wondering, what are they going to do next to make sure that those prices stay up there? Because they don't want the reality of how much that carbon tax was costing Canadians. Think about it. 25% tariff. Our prices didn't fluctuate. After the carbon tax, they immediately put in these tariffs. It was a cover-up. Previous episodes, I busted this. I still haven't seen any other independents who caught on to it. Nobody's talking about it. It was literally done on purpose to hide from Canadians what we were actually paying. And they got busted. And that's what happened in that phone call. They knew we were going to get thrown in court. They knew there was no way to hide it from Canadians. This is another cover-up. And mainstream ain't talking about it. That's why I need you to like, share, and subscribe. And now, just before I go, I want to show you one last clip that is absolutely hilarious. This, full applaud for this journalist. Dougie, you're an idiot.
Hi, my name's Nathan from the Sarnia Journal. I just have a quick question and then a follow-up.
Sure.
Doug, do you know the average price of a home in Sarnia Lambton?
I can't say I do.
All right.
But Bob would be able to tell me, and I bet the mayor would be able to tell me. What's the price, the average home?
We're at
That's pretty good.
That sold this month is $550,000. So I'm curious, and this is my question, Premier. You've brought every important person, or at least people that think that they are important, into Sarnia Lambton together to announce less than the cost of a single family home here. How is this anything but theater? Framing your government as helping in the middle of the worst housing crisis we've ever seen.
Well, first of all, thank you for those kind words and that compliment. We don't think we're anything special. I want to tell you very clearly, I'm the average guy that puts his pants on one leg at a time. And we all work our backs off for the people. That's our goal, is to make sure that we protect the people, to make sure that we create the environment and conditions for companies to come here and invest. That 409 companies in 2024 came and invested $40 billion, created 25,000 jobs. That's my job. My job is to protect the people, protect families, and protect businesses to make sure everyone has a job. But we're going to keep building and making them affordable homes. And do you know what's ironic about your comment? I got off the airplane, and we got to support you somehow with that airport. It seemed pretty quiet in there. But I got off the airplane, and we drove by a community right beside the airport. And I told my assistant, I said, ask the OPP if we can pull into that community, because that's a beautiful community that I want to duplicate. The prefab homes that I saw, I just drove by. I have to go inside. And
Prefab homes. Who's invested and owns those companies? Carney and Brookfield. He exposes himself right there. This reporter's question was brilliant. You get to hear Carney, literally Carney, coming out of the Dougie.
I'm going to drive through it. These are the ideas that we're thinking about every single day to make life more affordable. But do you know the foundation of our healthcare, our education?
Did you know that Ontario is the most indebted province, call it jurisdiction, in the world per person? Did you know that? Yeah. So $40 billion that didn't build, what, less than 600 houses to date. Housing crisis, homelessness, crime. And what does he do? Well, brags about how his best friend Mark Carney and him go to the cabin and have great talks. This is the guy screaming, tariffs, tariffs, we gotta hit Trump, we gotta nail him. Rah, 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 rah. Pretty quiet today there, Dougie. Pretty quiet. Never ends with these politicians. Well, I hope you enjoyed the episode, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Check out my clothing and merch at the store. There's some great new products that just came out. The Turd Tour shirt. It's priceless. Maybe you too can get kicked off a plane for wearing a blackface special. And a couple other shirts, and a lot more is going to be rolling out. I just ended up settling a whole bunch of kind of a digital thing that was going on. Like I said, nothing but the best. Top quality clothing, top quality digital prints. So make sure you like, share, and subscribe. If you can, donate. Website or the email is listed below in the description. Until the next time, I'm Alias the Guy. You've been watching the Canadian Citizen Journal. Stay informed.